Hi guys, this is David Negrin, host of the Script Podcast and executive director of the NYC Screenwriters Collective. I'm excited to announce that we've created a Patreon campaign for the Script. Patreon is like a Kickstarter, but it allows you to give ongoing pledges every month and receive ongoing rewards. Of course, the Script Podcast will continue to be free, but we're just asking for a little help. So please, check out all our rewards, join our inner circle. Become a patron of the Script Podcast at patreon.com/thescript.
It's the first ever large-scale colonization mission.
We're making history here.
You hear that?
What? This is the Script. Welcome. We're at Adorama. We're back. We're doing Covenant, Alien. Everybody, I got so many friends here today. This is like our biggest podcast ever. The Script Podcast for screenwriters by screenwriters. The deepest story analysis anywhere on the internet. At the Script, we believe story moves pages, story moves product, and story moves people. Tonight, I'm your host, David Negrin. I'm here with Kristina Leath Malin, Jeremy Engdhal-Johnson.
Just woke up from cryo sleep.
Alka Khushalani.
Hi, David.
And Alec Pollak.
Hey, David.
Guys, we've been waiting for an alien for a while. We've been waiting to have some questions answered from Prometheus, whether Prometheus technically qualified as an alien film or not. A lot of great promo trailers, extra content before the movie was out. What did you guys think? I want to just do like a little upfront favorite moment in the film, one up, one down kind of thing. And who wants to go first?
Jeremy should go first because he has notes.
Jeremy, take it, man. What did
We should. I'm sorry, David. We
Yeah.
should just preface this that it is a spoilerific podcast today.
Absolutely, we're gonna spoil the movie. Yeah.
So if you haven't watched it,
And in that manner, Jeremy, tell us what you liked.
Well, I liked the effort to deepen the philosophy and kind of take it in some new directions. I think we're going to probably hammer on this pretty hard because they made a big friggin' mess of the whole thing.
Really?
I don't know.
This isn't like a positive comment.
Well, like, I appreciate the attempt to
Wait.
take something that we all love and you know, I want to talk about kind of the span of this series at some point, but I mean, this started in 1979.
Yeah.
And most of us grew up with these movies. And this is in our, this is wired in, hardwired stuff. So anything that's kind of, bringing us more information, more detail, more complexity, I think it's a good thing. Whether or not they pulled it off, that's an open question.
Well, talk about a covenant between the fans and Ridley Scott, right? This, there's going to be some mentions of sort of George Lucas copy and pasting and gluing together mythologies here tonight. But I really love this movie. I was on the edge of my seat. I had a lot of fun. But Alec.
yeah, I was really excited by it as well. It had me most of the way through, really, really excited and really with it. And my favorite moment, it's also one of the most ridiculous moments, but my favorite moment really was that revelation of David creating the Xenomorph.
Okay.
And engineering it. And I just thought that had epic and kind of really full franchise repercussions in terms of what it meant for both this trilogy that we're watching now, Prometheus, Alien Covenant, and the next one, as well as what your whole path of the androids and the android story through all of these movies is kind of like a parallel story with the Alien story, and now they've dovetailed together. I love that.
Yeah, we're gonna get into why it's not called Android Covenant or the Android franchise. Alka?
I think, did this film really warrant any strong feelings at all?
No, I want to ask you what you
pose.
liked about it. What did you like about it?
Okay, I'm going to say what I liked about it, but then I'm going to... Okay, so there were more women on this crew, okay? And I appreciated that. But it was like the Sandals cruise of alien ships, right? It was all couples, and they were sent to colonize. So those women were bearers of
they
humanity.
they had on board
And-
fetuses in case you can't make one.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and I just kind of thought, oh well, there goes my feeling of being happy that there were a lot of women, and also those women, every time they warned the men, like, don't land there. Oh, this is too risky. It's like,
They
no,
just
we're not
ignored it
going to listen to
completely.
you, even
Yeah.
though you're now the captain.
The-
We're like, we know
The
what
second
we're
in
doing.
command, the priest,
We
the
have
white
like cowboy
male
hats,
priest,
and we're going to
said-
do our thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with all that. I also thought the fact that you had couples who were pretty much consistently separated throughout this mission. So someone's on the ship while someone else is getting like turned into some terrible chop suey, and like I think it added an interesting dimension suspense-wise. I agree. The men should have listened. They should always listen.
They should.
They're Kristina?
I'm on the polar opposite end. I feel like I'm not a feminist anymore. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved the fact that we had another female lead protagonist, even though she bit it, eventually in the end. I also...
That's a question. I don't know if she bit it.
Well, he said she was going to go through Shaw. The only thing that I didn't like was, as smart as she was, and I said this to the guys, like before Walter got on the ship, I'd have been like, "You remember the cabin, right?" It's just to check. Like,
You would have checked
why would you go
earlier.
for that in cryo sleep where you have no power to do anything? Yeah.
Do it before you get
Yeah,
into
exactly.
the pod.
You'd be like,
okay?
"Oh, you want to get on here?
Yeah.
What were we gonna build as soon as we landed?" Yeah, I kind of
Yeah.
felt like that. She was so smart. She would have asked that.
Yeah.
But I'm such a basic bee when it comes to loving this whole. I loved everything about it. It connected. I even went back and saw the first scene of Prometheus to see how that. I loved. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I loved.
Let me
Loved.
quickly. I want to we want to talk about who the artists are. Ridley Scott's our director, of course. Blade Runner, Alien, Prometheus, Gladiator, American Gangster, personal favorite, Black Rain. The Martian was a big hit. Our screenwriters are John Logan, who's well known for writing Gladiator, The Last Samurai, Hugo, The Aviator. He wrote on Skyfall. And Dante Harper, who was like an indie screenwriter for a while. He's best known for being the screenwriter of All You Need Is Kill, which was a Blacklist favorite in 2010, which became Edge of Tomorrow, of which he was not credited as a screenwriter later after it got taken over. But since then he's worked on things including The Forever War, which was a project Ridley Scott was attached to. Original characters. There was 2 story by credits on this, Jack Paglin and Michael Green. And the original characters from Alien are by Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett. Dan O'Bannon has a great screenwriting book. I don't know if anyone's read it, called Dan O'Bannon's Guide to Screenplay Structure. That being said, this franchise was begun by Ridley Scott, and then it was left to several other filmmakers to shepherd it. James Cameron, David Fincher, and it, how did that affect where it went from the 1979 movie to what we saw at Covenant?
And can you remind people like what Cameron did and what Fincher did?
Cameron did Aliens. David Fincher did Alien 3.
Juno, right? Juno was the
Juno did Resurrection, right, with a
With
screenplay by Joss Whedon.
Joss Whedon, yes.
Yeah.
And then Ridley was back for this whole thing.
For Prometheus and Covenant. Yes, Alec. What happened?
Well, again, we've had lots of conversations about this idea that the Alien movies themselves became an opportunity. They were almost a genre of movie themselves for other creators to come in and apply different subgenres to. So we had the genre of the action movie after the genre of the horror movie with the first. We had the genre of the horror movie.
So Alien was a horror movie. Aliens was
became
what?
A blockbuster action movie.
Action movie.
Very different genre
Right.
in general. Alien 3, what would we say that would be?
That's
Thriller.
horror. That's back.
That's
in horror.
that's back to horror,
Back
right?
to horror.
Contained thriller / horror.
Yeah.
Resurrection, adventure, space.
You had the pirate crew.
Yeah, I mean, I've referenced Alien Resurrection a lot of times because Joss Whedon, the format of that movie is the prototype for Firefly. The crew in Prometheus match up 1-for-1 with the crew on Firefly. But then you get the crew on Resurrection, that is. Then you get to Prometheus, and Ridley Scott takes it back.
Well,
Back to the
and,
core of
and
the
it's
mythology.
interesting too that when it was on loan to Cameron and Fincher, they actually stuck to the kind of original mythology pretty tightly. You know, you get a thing on your face, and thing grows in you, and bursts out of your chest, and oops, there we go.
Aliens are the antagonists.
Aliens are the antagonists, but and I know we'll talk more about this, but the way that the aliens are born and kind of the evolution of the aliens is pretty standard. And then Ridley Scott comes back and starts complicating things. Not necessarily in a bad way. I mean, I was fascinated by Prometheus and all the different variations. The Cobra-looking thing, like, in this movie we got these weird kind of Pan's Labyrinth-looking things. Like, there's different species that are emerging from all this. But it took the creator coming back, which is actually kind of an interesting metaphor for the plot, the creator coming back to really start changing things up.
Yeah, I mean, so just to be clear, in the original Alien, the alien is an antagonist. In Aliens, the alien and the alien queen are an antagonist. In Alien 3, some of the prisoners are antagonists, but mostly it's the creature again. In Resurrection, it's definitely the creature. But Prometheus comes out, Ridley Scott takes the reins back, and now it's Wayland, right? And now it's the android.
I don't
and
agree.
the same in Covenant. We have some aliens here, but come to find out, David is the main antagonist, the big brain.
So you said that with Alien, the original, the aliens were the protagonists, antagonists. I don't think they were. I think, and this goes back to the androids, that
Okay, good, fair enough.
in the sense that two species are trying to survive in the same space, and different species have different ways of surviving. The only true antagonist I saw was the cyborg that wanted to contain both and
Ash.
use.
Ash,
Thank
the
you.
android, right, sure.
And he was, to the violent extent that he was going to impregnate Sigourney Weaver or make sure that we kept the species to bring it home. I felt like she was more fighting Ash than the alien in the sense that, I don't know, I'm cheering for the alien. I don't see.
Well, that's part of the fun of this franchise is you can end up cheering for the alien.
But also think about what that means for what happens in the first movie, what happens in Alien, what the consequence of Covenant is. If there's some programming of the androids to have that creation element to them, maybe something continued on through, and Ash's actions in that first movie are more than just the programming of
Be
Wayland.
maniacal.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's a
Like-
common
Genetic.
theme is droids with
So true.
motives we don't understand, and they seem to be detrimental to the entire mission, unless the mission is not for the reason we were told it was, which has happened more than once. That's a convention, right?
And this is one of the things that was filled in Covenant, which is the mythology behind the androids. David has the ability to create. He's a creative android. Eventually, Walter was not. They took away the creative potential, and they just follow orders. What does that mean for the evil plan? Like, what does that mean for the controlling idea for the story, Alka? What do you think?
I mean, I think it's an interesting theme in general, is like, who is the creator? And I think these androids kind of, the fact that they have like all these fuzzy motivations, it leaves a lot more nuance on the table, because you always understand that there is what they are programmed to do. There's this hidden motivation, and then there's the external action. And I think that there's always tension between the two. And I think that's one of the great successes throughout the franchise, is that you have this innate tension in the character of the android.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the first instinct I had was before I realized it was a creator and father-son situation. And, Ridley Scott with Prometheus particularly, and then now again in Covenant, is really a little obsessed with the idea of immortality. He's one of those filmmakers who's getting older. He sadly lost his brother, Tony, one of our great artists. So you could see him being very interested, even back to Gladiator and some of his other films, the idea of immortality and your legacy being important to him. More interested in the androids and creator myth than a strong female protagonist battling for a surrogate daughter in Aliens #2 versus a mother alien and her battling against her children, which is what James Cameron put into the franchise. And that, I think, is what a lot of people identify with the Alien franchise, is this, a strong female protagonist who's not listened to by the men around and the corporation that's messing with her. And at the end of the day, she's a badass construction worker and has construction worker skills and uses them to beat up aliens, and particularly, a feminine alien sort of form. So, but really, I don't think Ridley Scott's that interested in that.
Well, there's layers of creation, here. I mean, we're introduced to the engineers in Prometheus, and the engineers purportedly invented humans, and they invented this pathogen that is the alien, and then the humans invent the androids, and then the androids undermine everybody, and so it's interesting in that regard.
The engineers are male. They are clearly a male form.
Oh, it's this weird kind of
they're humanoid,
male Roman
but he's
humanoid
male,
thing.
Not on the planet, though.
Well,
Not on the planet.
No,
though.
in Covenant we do get to see engineers of
There was more of a mixed
different-
bag of
different
engineers.
genders, yes.
Right.
But we also, so Prometheus is the title of the first of the prequels, and that's a specific myth, right? That's stealing fire from the gods. There's more. There's another P in here. It's kind of the Pygmalion, trying to create the perfect being, and
There you go.
that gets layered over especially with David's motivations as he's he kind of reveals why he has done this and why he's done all this engineering and why he's created these monsters.
What's his evil plan? And what is his motivations? Let's put a finger on it. Let's not philosophize about it. What practically is David trying to achieve, and why?
I think on a very basic level, he's trying to one-up his maker. I think.
Yeah, he's definitely, there's a father-son, he was born of Wayland, and he kind of was like, and that interesting prelude was about him saying, I'm going to outlive you.
Exactly.
Which was probably, like, dialogue-wise, probably the best part of this film. It felt very...
The first 5 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of was like, when you think about it, I feel like is it a B story that they started with, or how did they make this choice? But the choice was a strong one, and I thought that they really, this idea of, like, we're talking about theme stated, who created you?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I understand you created me, but who created you?
And
And that
hopefully we'll
immediately-
find that out.
Yeah.
Right. And then he mentions
That's
he
his fixation.
He reminds Wayland that he's not immortal and that David is.
Right.
And that's when Wayland asks for his tea. Like, can I get my tea? Right?
Well, can we talk about that scene for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Can we talk about the tea?
So, David goes and plays piano, and he plays Wagner, and he plays the Entry of the Gods into Valhalla,
Yeah.
which is from the final scene of the first of 4 operas by Wagner in the Ring cycle.
Oh, here we go.
Das,
Yep,
yeah,
he's
Das
gone
Rheingold.
there.
Did his homework.
And so what's happened here in this opera, and I think it's relevant because it has echoes of Prometheus. But the idea behind the Ring is that there's this dwarf Albrecht, and he's stolen the Rheingold from the Rhine maidens. And the Rheingold is very powerful, and stop me if you heard this before, because
It's like
it
MacGuffin.
it can be turned into a ring of power that will allow you to wield complete control over the entire world. Never heard that one before. So Albrecht takes the Rheingold, and he has it, and a lot of things happen. And then at the end, the gods, Votan and so on, take it away from him, and he curses it. And he's like, you're never going to be able to wield this. And everyone's like, Votan, give it up, give it up. He's like, no, I got the ring, I got everything, I'm good to go. And so
that's like very much like Prometheus.
Very much like Prometheus.
Okay.
And then after he does all that, we
German
have
opera
the
Prometheus.
entry of the gods into Valhalla. They've just built this castle, and it's awesome. So they're entering Valhalla in this extremely hubristic moment because the god of the world just took the ring, which he shouldn't have taken, shouldn't have ever been stolen, give the gold back to the Rhine maidens, but no. So at this point in this movie, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just the ultimate dork fest. Like, I love this. And it's the perfect echo of Prometheus. I think we went in different directions after that, but I mean, there's some good liberal artsy stuff in there.
Yeah. So but then it comes back to, but if all these old white men obsessed with legacy and getting into controlling the world, if they would just listen to one of the intelligent women on the craft, just don't go down there. Don't go in the house. Right?
And going back to Prometheus, I mean, the engineers have this pathogen, right?
Right.
And that is kind of the thing that's lurking in the background here. And the question that's lurking in the background, like, why do they want to destroy
what
their
do you
creations?
think? What do you think? What is that? That's not answered in Covenant, is it? The
No.
black xenovirus, right? Alec, what do you think? What are our answers?
If you look at it in the actions of the engineer and his response to actually meeting the human being in Prometheus,
Yeah.
and his reaction to meeting David and Waylon,
He just gets angry.
he rips David's head off.
Yeah.
David's an abomination. He's the whole reason of why they're so angry and they were going to go back and destroy humanity to begin with. That was the purpose of the engineer ship in Prometheus, right?
They're angry at humanity for being imperfect, or being...
There are some theories that say that they actually did send an engineer to check on their creation about 2,000 years ago.
Okay.
And we crucified that engineer.
Oh, is that part of the internet theory?
That's what
Okay.
chatters around.
That's
I
the
like
only
that.
engineer with really long hair.
Yeah, exactly. He was incognito,
Interesting.
And that was not the right move, evidently.
Shouldn't have done that.
Shouldn't have done that. That was the test, and we
I
failed.
like that internet theory.
So, that internet's got
Because there's I don't know that they figured out that the Covenant answered the questions about the engineers, because they very quickly take us to what we thought was supposedly this lost civilization of the original humanoids, right? Maybe they're evil, maybe they're not, maybe they have this complicated relationship with us, their children, which they created,
I find it a little confusing, though.
Yeah, and it, why does David decide to kill them all, right?
To be God, because he wants to be a creator. That's his thing.
Yeah.
So you got to be a destroyer to be a creator.
He's going
kinda
to
what they
destroy the masters, so he can become the masters. I mean, I got David's
His journey
side
makes
of it.
sense. Yeah.
I think like the engineers
and
thing.
the
it's a
aliens
little
are
nebulous.
his creation.
The aliens are totally.
No, that's where I'm confused. Because if you go back to the opening scene of Prometheus, the actual engineer, when he takes whatever he drinks, he dissolves. His pathogens are what goes into the water, and that's the same thing that they
I don't
played
know
in
that
Covenant.
that's the xenovirus.
I think it is.
He becomes like that first seed of life.
Yeah.
I thought those are not pathogens.
I think
that
I
was
thought those were the
the
pathogens.
ultimate giving
I
birth
think
to humanity. Like starting in the water, he goes into this.
I think
Because
Ridley
that's
needs
still
to
in
have
that
different
town.
colored goo if he wants us to understand the plan. Because you're right, it's like black liquid, and pretty much on the internet they refer. It's called black liquid now. The xenovirus liquid. I mean, at some point, I guess.
So that's why I got confused, because when we go into Covenant and it goes into his ear, and we realize it's airborne. Is that this? I was thinking that's the same dissolve from the engineer, and realized I never saw. Let's just look at creatures. I never actually saw an alien until it came out of those gentlemen.
Yes. So,
I hadn't seen that
but-
creature yet.
Can we also
Continue with
just,
your
for 1 second,
Yeah.
talk about the fact that these astronauts came onto a strange planet without space.
Without
suits.
space gear. Yeah, I totally thought about that.
So
There's a lot of what I've been
no,
called
but there,
SCS.
there's,
Oh
a,
my
there's a
God.
convention.
Everyone checks the air.
Just it's like
Just saying.
One at a time.
They weren't wearing red shirts at least.
Right. That there is a convention in the Alien franchise of bad decisions. Like the first act is full of bad decisions.
But this was non-stop. This was way through the second act
yes.
of bad decisions.
Well, the
this
midpoint-
is stupid crew syndrome.
It's all the way up to the midpoint. It's like a lot of bad decisions.
Yep.
But
And
that's
don't-
what gets you into a horror movie. You go into the house.
Exactly, and this specifically is the classic, the classic like horror, convention. It's the monster in the house.
Yeah.
Which is three things, right? Like there's a sin, a really stupid decision, and it's typically in the face of like bad leaders making a decision like, oh yeah, let's just bring him in.
Also, a convention in Alien, you always have a bad leader, right? You had the guy in Alien 3 with the low IQ. You had in Aliens, you have the lieutenant who also has like a low IQ, right? Who's never been on missions before, right? In the first Alien, no one's listening to Ripley, right?
Tom Skerritt as Dallas is the only person. I mean, he's kind of okay, but he makes the crucial bad decision to let the alien in.
And Covenant decides straight off we're killing the captain, and that's going to be
that captain is James Franco.
Let's
Yeah.
just get rid of that
let's
guy. Just
kill James Franco
kill him
as
off.
soon as humanly
He had a
possible.
moment in
You
the
can't
trailers,
disagree with
though.
that.
I'm like, that is an excellent decision.
But
I like seeing his body shot out into space.
But that actually, to me, works well with some of the mythology. A lost father, right?
Sure.
A missing father figure is what David is suffering from. It gets back to this male myth of immortality and the Jesus stuff
I
again.
get it, but like how much bad decision making by the crew and how much stupid characters as an excuse for plot forward and can we excuse as not lazy writing?
So
Never lazy writing.
All I will say is that the dumbest choices made for the most tension. That scene where the lander first lands on the engineer planet, and
We've never heard of this planet before.
But
We
let's-
won't ask
but
Mother.
it's-
We
yeah.
won't Google. We're just gonna go down,
Send
and we're not
probes.
gonna wear
Google.
space
Send
suits.
androids.
and it's better.
There's-
It's better than
Google still exists in 2100.
Okay,
Okay,
I feel like there's two different conversations. Are we going to talk about the plot and the script, or are we going to talk about the philosophy? Because
Well,
those are two totally...
We're gonna do plot in about 5 minutes.
So philosophically, now listening to you guys, I'm connecting more dots. And if the engineer is the creator of everything, that makes sense if he would be pissed off at David for bringing humans back, because maybe he's thinking like, I purposely engineered this out and I don't want to bring it back. And I feel like all of these guys are like, mine's bigger than yours. I can make it even better. No,
Yeah.
I've already made the best. Like every single iteration of a male version of species. And why have we not had any female androids, by the way?
feel like
All
creators.
seem to want to one up.
It's all a
And have a
boys'
bigger one.
fantasy. This stuff with the I'm the creator, I'm
Exactly.
immortal. That's all.
I think you're all jealous because none of you guys can create and we can.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
There it is. There
Boom.
it is. It's Da Vinci Code.
We're done here.
It's Da Vinci Code.
Drop the mic.
Boom. That's it. Ridley Scott
Nothing to say.
took away he took the focus from Aliens. The James Cameron, whether you like him or hate him, he made it about motherhood and maternal instinct, right, and creation.
Yeah.
And he's focusing on a bunch of men who cannot create and are struggling with it.
And there
That's
were
gonna
so
be my
many
segue
scenes of
to
men
take
giving
my child
birth.
to the bathroom.
Okay, there's so many scenes of men giving birth here, right?
Like what?
Like every one of these, like we end with Michael.
Fassbender, yeah.
Michael Fassbender, playing David, and he's like birthing these aliens like out of his throat.
Yes.
Ah,
Yes. Very,
excellent.
very.
Okay,
excellent.
we're gonna figure this
Actual-
orifice thing out, and we're gonna do it this
Yeah,
way.
absolutely.
You know,
We did orifices almost every way in this, right?
and every one of those, like in the first Alien when the thing popped out of John Hurt's chest,
Yeah.
right?
It's a birth.
It was just like a burst of something. And these, they kind of come out in like sacks.
yeah.
You know, they're like, it's almost like watching like a four-legged animal giving birth. And I think
There's
that
a lot of birth. Yeah.
there's like a lot of men giving birth.
Right. Which
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Although we have a new convention in this movie where instead of coming out of their chests, the alien erupts out of your back, which
Your
somehow
back or your mouth or.
We're gonna do it differently.
Anyway, yeah, the whole new neomorph like strain of aliens, they do things differently.
there's a lot of new rules in this one.
Well, so why don't we do 2 minutes on the rules of this universe and how they've changed or been violated? Because honestly, there's been some George Lucas like pasting together of mythologies here. Okay, on the internet, I found a map that says that that Prometheus, Covenant, and Aliens are all three they're different aliens. They are of different morphology. They're related, but they're cousins, right? So Aliens is what we will call the Xenomorph, right? In Prometheus, at the end, we get the Deacon for some reason. This is a religious connotation. And then in Alien Covenant, we have the Neomorphs, which is the white alien that we see, okay? Some people even say that the dark alien in Covenant is not the same as Aliens. They're calling it a protomorph, but let's not go that far. But how do you get these things? From the original Aliens, you have the egg sac, the ovum, then you get the face hugger, and then you get the chest buster, right? Mm-hmm. What do we do in Covenant? What do we do in Covenant? What are the rules?
Well, I mean, it's airborne for one. We have these little pods and
egg sacs.
These little like mold things come up and come in your ear.
Right, they're calling them motes or motes or some kind of they're
the neomorph.
They're like
yeah. Mm-hmm. And you do get a blood burster, but you skip the whole face hugger thing.
No, you get some face huggers.
For the Xenomorph.
With the Xenomorph.
Yeah.
Later on, right?
Yeah.
But earlier,
So he's playing around. He's playing around with his prototypes, and I think that was cool with me. That was fine. I was wondering, like, where's the second jaw? Where's,
But you skipped a rule of the universe, which is you've got to trick somebody into getting face hugged. Now it's just, you smell something or,
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Well,
We're doing the rules of the universe.
Apparently the parasite is backing off in its potency. I mean, like in Aliens, it's all about kill the queen because she's laying all the eggs that lead to the face hugger. There's no queen in this
single
one.
point of failure, right?
That we know of.
Yeah,
No, we said
not that
that
we've
was
seen.
the egg versus chicken theory. It starts with the egg.
David laid the eggs.
So David laid the eggs, right?
Again.
Quarter of the podcast.
Womb envy, right there.
More
Yeah.
womb envy.
Well, and on that topic, by the way, just because I think I watched Alien 3 this weekend after seeing this movie, and like it's an awesome movie. Like I did not, it had been more than 20 years since I'd seen it, and I did not appreciate it enough. But all those feminist themes, the fact that she gets impregnated with an alien and that's how this thing ends is crazy. Yeah. And it's like, they build up
and
to
she's
it.
in a men's prison.
Men's prison.
The only woman there.
They've taken a vow of celibacy, and of course half of them are rapists. I mean, it's like it's a terrible place for a woman to be, and she has this thing in her, and she's badass.
And that goes back to, like I was saying, the original mythology. James Cameron really pushed after Alien with his sequel, which was about a female hero's journey. Right. Whereas once we get to Prometheus, we're a lot more interested in the android's journey and all this womb envy and stuff.
But Prometheus did have that like self-inflicted C-section, which I appreciated.
Oh.
Yeah. I was like, there was something kind of, unforgettable about that. That's the most unforgettable thing other than that first
That
scene.
is a great moment.
I was
It's
like,
that was
something
an
we've
amazing
always
moment.
wanted to see, is if you could save somebody who's been impregnated by an alien.
Well,
Yeah.
and I thought it was a lost opportunity based on how Prometheus evolved. So, like, if you think about the evolution, so David dips his finger in the black goo
Black
and
liquid.
puts it in the scientist's drink, and then he drinks it, and then he has sex with Shaw, and then he impregnates her with an alien, and then she removes it via the metatube or whatever. And then that thing like ingests an engineer and then scoops out something else. I wanted to see that thing being hardcore, like that being the next step in the evolution in this movie. And I mean,
Yeah.
It worked out fine, but I was disappointed that it didn't work that way.
The whole idea of David genetically engineering and experimenting on these earlier forms of the xenovirus, the black liquid, the egg sacs, the blood burster, and the neomorphs to create the xenomorphs is that taping together of the mythologies that from Prometheus and Aliens that I'm talking about. Why did the alien have to be so different in Prometheus from the ones we've seen in the first film and in the second film? Why?
I think Ridley Scott said, like, don't call Prometheus like a straight prequel, and I think he left room so he could go two ways with narratives. We could go right back to Ripley's story and continue there, or we could go back to the engineer story, and I think that was a smart choice of his to have different avenues that he could take this whole universe.
Yes, but let's not pretend like it was planned. Like, it certainly wasn't planned, because Elizabeth Shaw was the stand-in for Ripley in Prometheus, and she's been, she was taken out of this story completely. She appears in Covenant in like a flashback, right?
Well, that was
I was okay.
There's
Go ahead,
definitely
Al.
a conflict here in terms of where Ridley Scott wants to go with things, and what's going to sell tickets. I mean, that's a conflict.
Right,
that's
right.
happening.
The franchise.
We know that it happened with Prometheus. We know that that Deacon scene was kind of tacked on to the end. I think
Is that
in
right?
the original plan, there wasn't any of that kind of alien in it at all. Like at the very
Really?
Wait,
So
what are we
he
talking
didn't
about
even
here?
Prometheus, the very end of
alien
Prometheus.
At the end, they
That
call it
alien-looking
Deacon somehow.
Prometheus. But even look at the trailer. Just watching the trailer that we just saw just now for Alien Covenant. When did everything in that trailer take place? What part of the movie? It was all Act 2B.
Yeah.
It was which is not where you usually get trailer material from.
Right,
Trailer
should be
material is
Act
usually
2
2A.
fun and games. Yeah.
That's the fun and games. That's
Wait.
all the craziness. But if this movie's trailer was an Act 2A movie trailer, no one would go see it. Just because
I
in that
would.
initial part, it's all just lead up.
Wait,
But-
I'm
think there was
having
a
big
lot of
like,
two-way stuff.
This is what I think.
Trailer-wise?
With
Yeah.
Prometheus.
One at a time.
I'm kind of like over the whole beat up Prometheus because I feel like it's like Rogue One. It's a one-off, and it has it's in the universe, but it's different. And I feel like we're so okay with Rogue One, and we're not beating it over the head to not be exactly have Han Solo or this, but we're not doing the same here. We're like totally destroying this franchise when he said himself, don't assume that this is all going to line up.
But this
Why do we
movie
accept it with
takes
Star Wars and
but
not with
this,
the Alien
I agree.
franchise?
I agree that they don't match up that well. But this Covenant begins. The prologue is the last 10 minutes of
It's
of
definitely
Prometheus. It's completely a sequel.
and it's an origin story.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
That's
all
exactly-
of it. It's
exactly.
like
Totally
even the
agree.
planet that they're going to is named like Orge or something
Totally.
like
Or a guy, yeah.
something.
Well,
Like,
and in the history of
it
this,
could be the
if this-
Sandals Cruise thing
You
again.
have
but
the
it could
Sandals
be-
thing.
Yeah. In the history of this series, I think one of the reasons I didn't watch Alien 3 for a long time is because I was so pissed they killed 3 characters I really cared about from the prior movie. The whole reason you care about aliens is, can we get Newt to the ship and get her to survive? And then in the first 10 minutes of Alien 3, she's dead. And Hicks is dead, and Bishop is dead, and you're like, wait, I've
Not cool.
It's not cool. And so this was a similar thing with Shaw,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
we care about a character and we're just gonna, we'll get rid of him before we even get to the, the inciting incident.
And in her place, we have the Daniels, who's the Katherine Waterston character. How did you guys feel about her taking over the reins for the strong female protagonist lead?
I think my question was, are they going to let her wake up? Right, because
in the
I don't
end.
trust them. Like because they got rid of everybody else.
Yeah.
Are
Well,
they
this is-
going to let this woman wake up in that pod?
That's at the end of the movie, but
Yeah.
for this
No,
film,
but here's-
during the movie, how does she carry the torch?
Yeah, she totally does. But and I loved her in Fantastic Beasts. But here's the thing, the whole issue. This is So the dying, we have Newt that comes back and she's dead, right? And then the top of this one, Shaw comes back. That's a classic horror trope, like Friday the 13th Part 2. You take out the heroine that survives the previous one. That's not new, and I don't have a problem with it either.
What's the suspense reason?
I
to
like
do
that.
There's well, let's just call a spade a spade. You probably couldn't get Hicks and Newt because their agents didn't
Well,
make it
in
happen.
horror, it's you
Probably.
hire a new cheap
person.
actor,
Yeah,
right?
stand
That's
in.
why it's a horror convention. They've got budgets for these.
But do they
movies.
stand in as the half man?
And two, because
They didn't
with
do that to
three-
Jamie Lee.
No, not with her. But the thing is, with 3 too, if you're deciding to set it on a planet of all males, it's hard enough having a woman. Can you imagine having a woman and a child on a rapist planet, and all the blowback from having it, like, to protect the child?
That's true. It's a dark planet to have Hicks and Newt wake up on.
Because he's going to be emasculated because he probably can't help her much because he kind of got beat up pretty bad. And then a child, molestation. I wouldn't want to go down that road
I
right
agree. It's a different scenario. Let's talk structure, guys. Second half of our podcast, we would like to do break down the movie structure-wise. I mean, we don't have to do all 15 beats. We can do setup, inciting incident, break into 2, midpoint, all is lost, break into 3. But you guys feel free to jump in with extra beats along the way. Does anyone want to tell us quickly the beats that make up the setup? Our Act 1 for Covenant. Alka, thank you very much.
So
Volunteered.
So the setup is that the Covenant is a colonization ship.
Which is why we have all the couples.
Yes, we've got crew, we've got colonists, we've got embryos, and they are headed to this planet that is years away, I guess, and that's where things.
Why are we colonizing? Anyone? Is it clear?
No, it was a mission, but I would think the inciting incident, not because I'm
We're not there yet.
Come on. Okay, fine. Well, go ahead.
What do you-
Because
what is
it's
the
in my
inciting-
head right now.
Okay, what's the inciting incident?
The whole James Franco thing. I think that kind of threw me off, but it is the inciting. Because I'm just thinking right now, had he lived, they probably wouldn't have gone there. They probably would have stayed the course. There wouldn't have been so much like who's the captain between
Right.
his girlfriend and the religious guy.
So go ahead.
There's the solar flares or
Exactly.
electrical
Neutrino
event,
burst.
neutrino
Yeah.
burst
Yeah.
that hits the ship and wakes everybody up.
And only the
And-
crew,
Oh,
guys.
Only the crew.
crew. We
And-
lose
that's
some
true.
colonists, but it's only the
Sadly.
crew.
But
that,
then
like, wake up.
we've got they receive
That's
the country
true.
road transmission,
Yep.
which is kind of the thing. It's
That's our
another
inciting
Call
incident.
to
another
adventure.
alien
Call to
trope.
adventure. Yeah.
It's a ping.
Is,
It's
From
a
John.
ping
we
from
got
an
some
unknown
phantom reception and she's singing "Bad Country."
John Denver's
John
not
Denver.
bad.
Come
That's
on.
not
Her
bad.
version was bad.
That is not bad.
Well, because New Me doesn't have perfect English, but she's all right. So they pick up the radio transmission.
right, the transmission.
We
That's
get
the
we start the movie with the prologue with Wayland and David.
Oh.
Okay, which sets some of the theme. Is there a theme stated in there?
Can I just want to jump in real quick because one thing that we should play around with as well or talk about is the prologues that were online to see that happened even before any of the film.
Yeah.
And I
I
know
want
that they
to do
weren't
structure of
film
this movie. They didn't put it in the movie.
I know, but
Okay,
they're
so-
almost essential for understanding it. So go on.
Was there a theme stated, Alka?
I thought the theme stated was "Who created you?"
Creation. Yeah.
Like, that works, and that happens in the
And
prologue
that
with Wayland
prologue,
and David.
which I also feel was like, kind of like the B story up front, which you may or may not agree with.
Sure.
but-
I mean, I think David has to be the B story, right? So we'll see. We'll see. So then they get the Covenant's headed to Origai, neutrino burst. Then they get the radio transmission, very habitable planet, and our new captain Orem, who's also religious. He's supposed to be like a pastor of some kind.
Yeah, they didn't do much with that.
Decides to investigate
I agree.
against the objections of Daniels, who's our sort of our protagonist.
Yep.
Okay. Then we break into the second act. What do we got, guys? Anyone else? Beats.
Well, I think the midpoint is meeting David, because that's what kind of turns the whole thing upside down, right? I mean, you
want to walk backwards from the midpoint?
Well, I would think the whole
Well,
the explosion.
I agree with that.
The first alien hatching and the explosion would be before that.
That's all
though.
fun and games to me.
Yeah,
That's fun
I
and
mean,
games.
there's a lot of fun in games. There's the spores. There's
David
new
is
ways to get infected
definitely-
with alien pathogen, and
That's
Yeah.
all Act 2A.
Yep.
Yeah.
For
Up
me,
to, up to David, right? I'm kind of with you. Like up to David, up to meeting David.
to
would
I
be
think
David.
it's
take things
past
different.
David. I think
The
until
midpoint.
Midpoint is David.
Let's talk about the midpoint, because that's the hardest thing in screenwriting is figuring out the midpoint. What do you guys think is the Alec? What do you think is the
I think
midpoint?
it's meeting David or David.
Meeting David. Okay.
Maybe David revealing himself, because suddenly it's a different story at that point, and that's.
Are the stakes raised? What did you think, Alka? Midpoint.
So, okay, before the midpoint, they're in Jurassic Park. They were in another movie, right? They're like on this Earth-like planet with creatures chasing them in the dark.
Yes.
And they have no way to fight them off. They don't know the rules about any of this. And this hooded figure shows up in the night and gets rid of their attacker, and all of a sudden says, like, follow me. And we see that it's
And we get to
Michael
go into
Fassbender.
the castle, this
Yeah.
engineer
Necropolis, yeah.
castle. Okay.
Right.
And that was a nice moment cinematically too, because we didn't know that he was going to come back. We were kind of like, "Who's Walter? Is that like David renamed?" But then
Yeah.
it's like, it's David.
And you did the clone thing. You did.
But
did
nobody
the, yeah.
acknowledges
thought it
that,
was the
hey,
end of
this
one.
guy looks a lot like our android.
It takes them a
Yeah.
few minutes. Yeah.
It's like
Right about
nobody
that.
says this. And then how does his hair grow? You know what I mean? Like, come on. This
agree.
was,
he can do what he wanted. He's
Bio
more perfect.
creation? Yeah, it's not
I don't know.
mechanical.
I
The
was
hairs.
like, the android
That's your
with the
question.
hair.
Is how does the hair grow?
It is a question.
How did he
It's
create
a
these
question.
aliens?
Okay, so this is what I'm not getting. Like, the end of each act should have a cliffhanger leading into the second, and that's why I kind of thought that the explosion right before he came and saved them, because we had the explosion that happens, then we have these new baby aliens that are running through the bush in the dark, and then he saves. I felt like that was the beginning of Act 2 when he saves them, and after the
I think no. The
explosion
beginning of Act
happens.
2 is going down to the planet.
Yeah,
Yep.
Right?
they land on
It's
the
that
planet.
choice.
All the
That's a
things,
long
all the
After
things
the
you-
debate-
all the things you're describing are that's Act 2 already. That's action. That's fun and games. You get the crew infected by the spores. You get the quarantine on the lander ship that doesn't go well. That for me also.
So what do you see as the end of Act 1 then?
The end of Act 1 is going down to the ship,
Here's the convention
planet.
from the ship to the planet.
with Alien, and Act 2 always happens on the planet, and Act 3 happens in space. Like, I know that's
Oh,
simplistic, but
Interesting.
it like, because I think the break into 3, or the low point is the shower scene. They think they're all good, and it's like, let's have sex in the shower. It's gonna be fun. It's like, oops, there's an alien here, and he's not welcome. This was not a welcome threesome. So, like, but the alien's on board, and now we have to deal with the alien on the ship.
Are
And-
they on the ship? They're still down.
No.
No, they're on the
That's-
ship,
They're on the ship.
by the shower.
Yeah.
But that's Act 3.
That's Act 3.
Yeah.
That's Act 3, but
Right.
they
I
do-
had for the all is lost when David disables Walter, and and then he captures Daniels. Like that's happening
At
on the
your-
planet. That's the all is lost. But they're able to reactivate him. Walter's able to reactivate himself, fight David off probably, and Daniels escapes, and then Lope gets is the guy who gets the attacked by the face hugger, and they kill the xenomorph with the crane on the planet, right? This to me is third act stuff.
I don't know.
I kind
I
of
think that
disagree.
we frequently have we have false summits in alien movies. We
Yeah.
think that we're done. And that's why I thought
Yeah.
that the shower scene was perfect for that. It's the same thing in Aliens where you're like, okay, it's okay. And then he's on the ship. And in Alien 3, you're like, she finally gets Bishop back up and going. It's like, is there a is there an alien like on the planet? Yes, there is. Oh, come, we got to go.
And
That's
kill
just
it.
the second ending,
Mother-
though. That
if-
takes 5 minutes. It's just
If Mother can identify that there's an alien on board, why can Mother not identify that Walter is not on board, but David is? Okay, there
Right.
is huge plot holes here.
Not a good
But I
mother.
Mother is not- is failing
disagree
us.
with your all is lost also, David.
Okay.
I think the all is lost is when Billy Crudup gets the face hugger. And he is like, he represents this idea of faith.
Okay.
Right? And so I think that's
And
the all is
he trusts David enough to go into the
yeah,
tomb
and he's
or
like,
whatever.
oh, have a look. And this guy is, run by faith. And boom, he's done for. And then the dark night of the soul is when David becomes Walter. And that is if you accept that Daniels is the protagonist. Because
Yes,
that
yeah,
is
yeah.
that moment where her hope is gone.
So you're pushing Fassbender on Fassbender into the end of Act 2 as
Oh,
opposed
yeah.
to beginning of Act 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
All right.
Yeah, because that is a cliffhanger.
Can-
I'm wondering who's
Can we
going.
can we take
running
one
back.
moment and talk about the Walter and David seduction scene? Does anyone want to comment on that?
No.
I think that you just volunteered to comment on
The
that.
flute.
The
Do we want to
flute.
talk about flute
The
playing?
flute. I'll show you how to play your
That's
flute.
very
I'll do
Alec,
the fingering.
very-
I
I'll
mean,
finger your flute.
Because
Please.
it's all
Laughs
David.
of the
Wow,
theater, right?
guys.
We had laughs in the theater.
Yeah, laughs
Wait,
in
well,
theater.
with the kiss, because like a regular audience is still a little they're still uncomfortable with male kissing.
I don't
Well,
know if it was
kissing
because of
yourself
that, though.
is
I think-
weird.
yeah.
Like, kissing
2017.
yourself
Yeah,
is weird.
kissing yourself is very.
But it was
That
Fassbender
is
and
right. Or it's
Fassbender.
a little like kissing your brother,
kinda
right? So it
nice.
was a
I-
little
like
Did you
no
open
one here
mouth or
knows what
closed
that's like,
mouth?
but kissing yourself, definitely no one knows.
It was
what
more
that's
like kissing a bro.
Fassbender
right, a
knows.
brother. So it was a little incestuous. But he's seducing him, right? That's part of the plan. It's part of his evil plan. Showing him creation, which he cannot do, that David's more perfect android can, right? Which is maybe trying to get him on board with his evil plan. When he asks him, he gives him the Paradise Lost quote, right? Which is, do you want to serve in heaven or reign in hell? So he's trying to seduce him with all these Lucifer-like, things, flesh and power and
I wasn't meant to serve.
lute playing.
I wasn't meant to serve, and neither were you. I mean, that was the most seductive line,
Yeah,
But it was all such great
For
setup.
women.
And then you've got the body swap where they swap
Yeah.
personages, and it was so telegraphed. It was so like, all right, this is clearly what's happening,
Yeah.
and then it was what happened. There was no surprise to it. That was my biggest disappointment.
nobody's
you saw
allowed-
the body swap coming?
Absolutely,
Okay.
He starts
absolutely,
cutting
100%.
his
I was
hair.
like, oh
He
please, don't
starts
let them do
cutting
this.
his
Yeah,
hair.
when
Don't
he
let
cuts
them
his
do
hair,
this. Don't
that's-
do
that's
this.
just-
And it was just like, you saw it was coming. I was like, please, 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 let it be something that I'm not expecting. That
Yeah.
there's some twist to it. And maybe Walter went bad. Maybe all that kind of seduction.
That
actually-
would have been awesome.
Right, like
that he
something.
successfully seduces
Right,
Walter.
right.
David dies, but passes on this
Something.
this
Better.
this crazy. Yeah, that's
yeah,
a better ending.
yeah.
David passes on this this yearning for power.
That was
But-
my moment.
Or he reprograms Walter.
Sure,
you
sure.
know what I mean?
Even if he
all
just
that
like
creating,
put his code into it.
Yeah.
So-
and Walter
so to speak.
ends up with like an alien head as
kiss.
well.
David Negrin,
Yeah.
not David the Alien. Since you've read Paradise Lost,
Oh, here we go.
let's
I
go.
wrote a screenplay about
Let's
it.
go.
What do you want to know?
How does this fit? And does it work?
The closest thing, so in Paradise Lost, you have it's sort of a sequel to the Book of Revelation, where you have where it's after Lucifer's been thrown out of paradise. Lucifer was apparently the head of the angels. He was God's favorite, and he was bestowed with great responsibility and power, of which we don't know what they were doing on Earth. It was maybe during Genesis, maybe during creation.
God asked him for tea.
It was a tea order. It was basically a
Play me
Starbucks-
some Wagner.
a Starbucks order and a little
was it.
piano, right? And so Lucifer, because he's too prideful and tries to take over paradise, before man is created. He's thrown out by God one way or another, and so he's in hell, and he's talking to some minor demons, and he's telling what Alka was saying. The lines that Alka was saying was that we were not meant to serve, right? We were meant to reign, and it's Lucifer versus in Paradise Lost. The Archangel Michael is his other half, who represents the light side versus the dark side, and a lot of people think the Archangel Michael in Old Testament is a stand-in for Jesus in the New Testament.
Archangel Michael Fassbender.
Archangel Michael Fassbender.
Yes.
Oh, whoa.
Jesus Fassbender.
Whoa.
Getting complicated.
Yeah, I'm just glad we didn't. Yeah. So, there is a Christ figure situation, but to me that didn't come through. I think the hubris of Lucifer, the hubris of David, that matches up pretty well. And that would be great if in the sequel, The Covenant, we see him and his hubris and his final plan, whatever that may be, on Uragai, and get the forces of good go up against his hubris, and then he'll fall. But we'll see. This Covenant sets up a good option.
Absolutely.
for a sequel.
Absolutely. Covenant is the Empire Strikes Back. The bad guys win. So what's next?
Yeah.
Can we dwell on that Star Wars comparison for a moment?
Sure.
I mean, Star Wars 77, Alien 79.
Mm-hmm.
It's inhabited many of our lives for a long time. Both of them had missteps along the way. We had Alien Resurrection, which in my opinion was a misstep. We had midichlorians and Jar Jar Binks on the Star Wars side, which were clearly missteps.
Yep.
Big.
So which of these has aged better?
The Star Wars franchise or the Alien franchise?
Yeah, Alec, I think you should answer this.
I mean, again, I think Star Wars has aged much better, just
Oh,
generally.
no. Oh, no.
It's a larger
There we go.
mythology.
I agree,
There's
yeah.
extended universe. Are you just
Yeah.
talking about the movies, or
Yeah.
even if you're just talking about the movies, the prequels at least expanded on the mythology, though they were the as filmmaking products, they failed in a lot of ways.
I just watched Phantom Menace with my daughter a few weeks ago, and yeah, it's awful. But it has bits of it that still do resonate.
It
and
answers
adds to
some
the mythology,
questions.
and definitely.
I think that I like that Alien doesn't answer all. The Alien franchise doesn't answer all of our questions. I like that there's some. I mean, and Damon Lindelof helped write Prometheus, and he's J.J. Abrams' right-hand man, the Mr. Mystery Box, right? They like to not pose questions and not answer them. They also wrote Lost together, the TV series.
We're in the middle of the story. I mean, to a good point.
We're
Like,
in
the middle of
the
story.
second
We can't
episode. We're in it
judge it
during
yet.
Empire, and we still don't know what's going to go on. And hope if Ridley Scott lands the pirouette in the third episode of this back towards the strong female protagonist, the maternal wisdom versus the paternal wisdom, that would be epic, right?
Yeah.
That would be epic.
Yeah, because then it will come full circle. It will have the full story, and in 3 years when we have this podcast again and talk about it, I think
Yeah.
it will be singing a different tune on the flute.
I personally think, and this is not to just rail against you, but looking at the franchise of Alien, and maybe it's more from an artistic, like art direction point of view, I feel like it was a more cohesive universe, and even scope and even pacing, even when they had different directors, barring two, though I love two, it was a little bit too actiony for me compared to the others, but I felt like I was still in a world I knew that Ridley created, even when he wasn't helming it. Versus Star Wars, which I loved, but I felt like we're just all over the place, especially when the newer ones started happening.
The newer ones, the
No, not
Force
the
Awakens?
new, the new.
The prequels.
The bad new.
The bad
The
news.
prequels.
Midichlorians.
I wanna let you guys last comments and questions before we do Q&A. Last things that you had to say that you kept in all day, all evening about Alien Covenant, things that you liked or disliked that you haven't heard.
No one's mentioned that moment. And like I said, it was my favorite aspect of it that David created the alien, but no one's mentioned the idea of that little alien kind of like popping up and like putting his arms out.
The chest burster.
When the
like
xenomorph actually like
Was that
burst
like a
out.
Christ thing, or was it just a
Oh, there was
mommy
a, there
thing?
was a there was a little alien on a crucifix.
Well, there was an alien on a cruise, but this is like the little guy that came out of Billy Crudup's chest, and like David went like this, and the little alien kind of like picked up his arms.
and learned from him.
I saw some comment that
Like
was
a
like, I
fo-
expected him to suddenly start singing "Hello, my baby," hello, like, because it was a little really ridiculous.
That's why I don't think of them as the
a Spaceballs
the
reference.
antagonists, because of the connection there. That's why I don't see them wholly as bad. It just is another species, but not bad, because they were learning too.
David's-
I mean, to some extent,
No,
we're
and it wa-
assholes
and
in universe comparatively.
That's true. At one point, David starts speaking to the xenomorph, and it has this almost this look of this childlike look, and then when Orange kills it, he's like, "No, you killed my child." Even though the child had eaten some people, there was some innocence to it, right? There was some innocence, and that actually is a great choice, a beat where we feel for the neomorph. When is the last time we felt for an alien?
Does Ripley count? Does Ripley's clone count?
Ripley's clone does not count.
No.
An actual xenomorph or neomorph, one of those.
I think the first time we ever see it, the first out of Tom Skerritt's chest, because it's a baby.
A baby.
Yeah.
I think I'll agree with that. I think I felt a little for the mother alien in the second episode when Ripley starts taking out her brood and she's crying, screaming, and we know that it's one mother and her child against another mother and her children, right?
I felt for the alien in Spaceballs.
Okay, whatever.
Anyone else? Last
Wait,
things?
I do have to comment, and I'm surprised no one's brought this up yet. Did anyone have this like deja vu moment when they start closing hatches and did like a repeat of Aliens 2 where they tried to like launch it out of space? Do you remember the end of it?
That's a convention,
But
yeah.
they did it in
But it was
Alien
kind of a-
in the first one.
They do it in every movie. It's a
Yeah.
convention of
She's trying
aliens.
to always get it
Like,
out
get it
into
to like the
hatch.
the hatch that has all
Yeah.
of the cargo bay.
But the whole idea of firing things into space, like we do this with corpses too. Like the Kane, the guy who has the thing come out of his chest in the first, he gets launched in. Captain Branson, aka James Franco,
Yeah, they
goes
set it
out
up.
in 6. Like we're all about firing bodies into space.
I thought we were
especially
douchey. I was
alien
like,
bodies.
God, we're littering in space, dude.
It's the only way in a Monster in the House movie in space that we can know that it's actually dead, right? The firing into space to know that the story's actually over.
I'm going to say one thing, which is whenever I see the first Alien when it's on, I always stop. I don't do that for any of the others.
Where? Or what
like,
puts you off?
I think, there's something in the silences of the first one that is like poetic. And it's really, it really kind of
Did you
gets
say you
it.
stopped to watch it?
I stopped to watch it.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I thought you
Let
meant
me
you
finish.
stopped watching.
Yeah, no. I stopped to watch it because there's something really beautiful and really heavy about the isolation, like the feeling of isolation of space in the first one that none of them ever kind of got back. They're chatty, they're actiony, they kind of move too fast.
Being
and
on
I
a
think
ship, like a marooned ship.
yeah,
you
it's
know?
like and you can in that first one you kind of linger over this beautiful art direction that you see with Ridley Scott, right? And here you had one moment, and that was with the sails, right?
That was
you
a-
see
a-
the sails going up, and my breath just caught. I was like, oh, they're gonna do this now, and that was it.
And then
That was it.
explosion. You got this huge explosion.
And
But
and
it's-
even when the sails went back, and then the lights went on, there was something so beautiful about that. And I thought, now just like live in this moment
Yeah,
for a
great
second.
moment.
Take this moment because it's so beautiful. This
It's
world is so
cinematic. Yeah,
beautiful, and they
absolutely.
do not give a shit anymore.
David and I were talking about this earlier. Is the pacing of this movie? That was one of my downs. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't feel that the pacing was right. The editor is a very accomplished editor. Worked on Gladiator. Worked on The Martian with Ridley Scott, but not a horror director, not a suspense editor. Sorry, that I feel like the editing, if it had been paced a little bit more like that original Alien,
some-
would have benefited. I
yeah,
feel like
if it
a
was
whole
just-
lot.
I totally disagree with you guys. Like, I noticed that it didn't really pick up, like we talked about the explosion, till 50 minutes in, because I looked at my watch at about 50. But I was okay with that, and it felt like 2001 Space Odyssey, where you just sat and you watched a film. It didn't have to have a lot of bells and whistles. I was totally
But
okay
there was a
with
lot
it.
of chatting.
to me-
there was
to
a lot of
me-
like my wife, my hey baby, you know, like I mean, there was all this stuff.
To
whereas-
me, Covenant was these three genres. It was the horror film, it was the science fiction film, like a 2001, and it was the adventure film. And this thing, like Alec and I were talking about, it was cut like an adventure movie more. It was not cut like the horror film. It wasn't set necessarily. It was cut a little bit like the sci-fi movie, like the slower pace this poetic pace you're talking about, the epicness of space. But it was mostly cut like The Martian, like an adventure movie. And I don't know that. I think you might have something there that it's not edited essentially with the same tempo and tone that the others have, but it's a choice. You know that. And it did make 2 hours go by like this.
Very, very quick.
And there was a lot of tension. That scene, I gotta say, my favorite scene is that scene when they first land and everything goes wrong. They've made some bad decisions, and then they just keep making more bad decisions, and then Xenomorphs are coming and people they're violating all the rules of you don't let things on a ship, right? You know, and then new things are being spawned and people are dying. I was on the edge of my seat for a good 10 minutes. So that was, and people's wives are dying left and right.
Well, and
you know?
part of why that was so good was because you had that dyad setup, which I think is if you were going to learn something from this film, like the idea of taking people who love each other and like separating them and then slowly killing them off, like there's a really good way to scare the heck out of people.
That's a good
And
horror
so-
movie.
You don't feel for any of these people's. I never felt for anyone's loss,
We didn't
including
get to know
our
them.
protagonists, because I was like, okay,
How about Danny
you know.
McBride? I mean, Danny McBride I thought was the most empathetic
Yeah.
character, no? In terms of his reaction.
That relationship was the most, but you're right. We didn't get a lot of time with the couple. You know,
I didn't
to
care
Except
empathize.
in the prologue.
Okay, in the
Yeah,
prologue,
exactly.
we
If you
meet
watch the
James
additional
Franco and his
materials-
wife have some time.
Yeah. You saw all the crew. You saw them interacting with their spouses. It was nice.
Right on.
You guys, we have a few people in the audience tonight. We want to be able to take some questions. If anybody has any questions in our audience about Alien franchise, about screenwriting, about anything we talked about tonight, we want to, take the time to answer them because you guys came out for us tonight. Any questions, sir?
Like, what's the Alien for Dummies path of watching aliens with this new one?
Oh, great question. What is the path for watching the films? There's no. Is it? Like the Star Wars films have multiple possibilities for watching, right?
I'd take the same path. I'd watch them in the order they came out.
Yeah, you think there's no rearranging?
No.
I
Required?
have the timeline, the literal timeline, but I agree with him. I would do it in that order.
Yeah.
Because the
So
thing
Alien,
is, too, might not
Aliens.
hold up cinematically
Right.
compared to how newer these versions are.
In Star Wars, a lot of people skip Phantom Menace now. Right?
Yeah.
I'd skip Resurrection.
You'd skip
I would
Alien
skip
Resurrection.
4. I would skip 4. Yeah.
I mean, they had an amazing trilogy, and then they're like, let's bring her back and let's make her mate with an alien and see what happens.
I liked 4. It feels like a really interesting science fiction episode. I do. You can absolutely skip all the Aliens versus Predator
Oh, yeah,
stuff. I watched a couple of them this week.
Yeah, I forgot
Don't need to
about
play the
that.
video games either.
They don't add to the mythology, and the
Annihilated
Predator
was
stuff
kinda
is
good.
far more interesting than the Alien stuff. Yeah.
But again, what's interesting, so Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection is a
Resurrection,
is a
we're
possible.
split on.
Prometheus, but definitely watch any of the extras for Prometheus. I think the one that we were looking at earlier today, the TED Talk
Vimeo.
that Wayland does.
Right, there's a
is
Wayland TED
brilliant.
Talk that's a prologue to Prometheus, which is great.
Yeah, yeah.
And then what are the prologues that you shouldn't miss for
Covenant.
Covenant?
The two prologues. One is the story of David and Shaw and what happens with them all. And you see it all, and you see Shaw kind of putting David back together, and you see Shaw kind of navigating her way back. Like, it's
I didn't
5,
see
6
that.
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely worth watching. And there's bits of it in David's
It's
story
called
in Covenant.
Right, it's called The Crossing.
Yeah.
Alien Covenant prologue, The Crossing. The other prologue is called
The Last
Alien
Supper.
Covenant, The Last Supper,
Yeah.
which is on. It's with the captain before
Yeah.
they go into cryosleep for Covenant. So we recommend those.
Yeah.
How much did James Franco get paid for that?
Apparently, he was in more of the movie in earlier scripts. The screenwriter, one
Glad
of the
they got rid of him.
screenwriters talked about it. Yeah.
He got his own vial of black goo. I think
Yeah.
that was his.
We got to watch James Franco get burnt up in space.
Definitely start
any
with
other
Alien.
questions? Any other questions out there? Screenwriting questions, filmmaking questions. Yeah, sure, sir.
So, like, I always felt like there was some part of like Waylon and David like hidden somewhere, to where like, you know, where it would make you seem like he was raging against humanity, but like Waylon's like secretly in there somewhere, you know?
Interesting. Yeah. So the question is about Wayland. That it seems like Wayland, that David has a piece of Wayland inside him, and that David may be raging against humanity, but is Wayland have an influence?
I kind of like I didn't like the philosophy that David landed on, this creation thing. It's like, oh, I'm creative. It's like I like to create awful parasites.
I
that
mean, frankly,
kill.
it's the singularity thing. It's AI. It's AI comes forward and doesn't like humans and then eats us. It's like
But
it's a basic one.
That's stupid. I'm way more interested in the idea that Wayland gave him orders, and that's what happened early, and that's what he's carrying out. Like
That would be great.
I find that way more compelling from like the idea of a droid who's just, I'm going to carry out, genocide, like regardless because my master told me to. I mean, that's really screwed up, but I can at least understand it, as opposed to, I cooked up this idea of coming up with these genetic eggs that would hatch
They're
things.
perfect.
Because they're perfect.
The TED Talk gives resonance to that, because in the TED Talk, Wayland talks about the Lawrence of Arabia scene where he pinches the match and says, the trick is not minding that it hurts.
Not minding that it hurts.
So that's in the TED Talk,
Which
is
goes
how
to what?
Prometheus starts.
Which goes to what part of the philosophy?
No. Prometheus starts with David watching Lawrence of Arabia
Mhm.
and quoting that scene again and again.
And
so why is he obsessed with that? It's a part of Wayland's philosophy and Wayland's mentality and Wayland's, what he loves. What
Power, hubris, perfection.
I'm not even specifying what it is that he's talking about. Just
Yeah.
that idea that there is that resonance. There is part of Wayland in David.
I think you're. I think that our audience member, it's absolutely true. Wayland is inside of David. The choices David is now making further down the path after Wayland's death are questionable. Is he trying to be like his father? Is he trying to surpass his father, or is he trying to carry out his father's orders?
Well, and there's two quotes, one in the most recent movie and one in the first movie, that I think, they've at least been thinking about this stuff for a while. So in the most recent movie, David, I can't remember who asked him, someone says, "What do you believe, David?" And he says, "Creation." And so we're meant to believe that that's the core of his philosophy. Going back to the first movie, Ash, the original android with homicidal motives, when he's looking at the alien and he's examining it, he says, "I admire its purity." Yeah. And so there's this sense of perfection and idealism that's at the core of the android ethos. But are we there yet? I don't know. I mean,
It's like the myth of Frankenstein as well,
Yeah.
right? It's like you create this monster, and you cannot control what happens afterward, because the monster goes into the world interacts with the monster,
Right.
and
So these
all
two
hell
things
breaks
they have in
loose.
common, with the idea of control, like ultimate control, ultimate power, right? Which is creation is the ability to create, is seen as control, and then perfection, the idea of perfection, beauty, perfect beauty, is another idea of control. And both are, rightly hubristic sins that pride that cometh before the fall. So hopefully that gets resolved in epic, manner in Alien
2.5.
Awakening?
3, Alien Awakening. What are you gonna call the third movie?
I think it's already
Any
titled.
It's you think it's titled?
Is
I
it?
think it is. I think it's titled
Well,
Awakening.
I know that Covenant was previously called Alien Paradise
Yeah.
Lost.
terrible name.
Yeah, not so good. A little on the nose. But you think, what's it called? The third movie?
I
It's
thought I
Awakening?
remember Awakening, but it may be
Anyone know?
Awakenings. Anyone?
Yeah. Well,
Why were you thinking like Revelations or something?
It was the Alien
Were you thinking,
Awakens. The Alien
Thinking,
Awakens.
like,
I think it depends on
Alien
the story
Summer
that they
Tryst.
decided- Shush. It depends on
Summer
the story they
Tryst.
decide to tell. Like it said, you can go backwards or forwards. So if they go back to the engineers, which we
They
don't
can't
know.
be going back.
Yes, you can go. When I say go backwards, you can tell the engineer's story.
We got a little bit of it. They wiped it clean. They were just like, "Oh, these guys made us, and
But
they
how
made
they got
made
there.
weapons." It's
Isn't
clear
he-
Ridley Scott doesn't care about that. He wanted to ignore it.
know.
He burnt them up and just like moved on.
That's their finale, but maybe we find out where they came from.
I'd love to
Their
learn more about
origin
them.
story.
I'd love to learn because apparently they're our origins, right? So
Alien, Spring Awakening.
Spring
Oh
Awakening.
gosh. On that note,
It's gonna be a musical.
Guys, I want to thank all of you for coming out. I want to thank our audience. I want to thank our screenwriters. I want to thank Adorama, our engineer, Seth Miranda. Thanks very much. The script is produced by David Negrin, edited by Zoe Alexander. Join our Facebook page by searching for NYC Screenwriters Collective. Follow us on Twitter at ScriptFeed. You can support the Script Podcast at patreon.com/thescript. If you like the Script Podcast, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes and subscribe to the Script YouTube channel. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
yay. Whoop, whoop.